Hello everybody and welcome back to Let's Play Dark Souls. I'm your host VGMKoren, and in the last one I reinforced the Uchi Katana, showed how to use a Firekeeper's Soul, showed what kindling a bonfire did, and got to this fog wall in the Undead Cathedral. Now as you can see, I went back to the bonfire between episodes to restock my Estus flasks, but did nothing other than that. I didn't spend my souls, which might have been wise, or bank my humanity in any way, which also might have been wise. Either way, let's go through the light. Now, I have a feeling that this is going to go extremely poorly for me. You see, I've never had difficulty with this boss fight, but my good friend Mr. Devious has. And as you can see, the first boss, or, well, not the first boss, the big boss is the Bell Gargoyle. This is a very powerful boss, and an interesting one. And as I was saying, I've never had trouble with this boss, but my good friend Mr. Devious has, and I have given him an endless amount of crap for dying to this boss. I really am probably about to get hit by karma and just destroyed, but possibly not. When fighting this boss, the key is circle strafing. And actually, that can be said of pretty much any boss in Dark Souls. You are going to take hits. Don't worry about it. And the moment that was the worst time to use an Estus Flask in the world. I'll see you back at the Bell Gargoyles. And we're back to the Bell Gargoyles. I hope that I have appeased the karmic gods with my sacrifice, my noble sacrifice of getting completely ruined by just completely destroyed by that fire attack. That was my fault. I saw him winding up for the fire, and I could have easily avoided that. But it happened, and maybe now I can take care of these bosses. As I said, I gave Mr. Devious way too much trouble. I deserve any difficulty I get out of this boss fight. But it is a fun first boss. Well, the first boss. I don't know. This is the first big boss in Dark Souls 2, I would argue. Dark Souls, not Dark Souls 2. Clearly, this is not the first big fight in Dark Souls. So, once the second gargoyle lands, there will be a kind of phase shift in the fight. One of the gargoyles will attempt to breathe fire at you, while the other will attempt to hit you in melee with his halberd. They won't try to flank you quite as much as they did before, but they will occasionally shift roles, and both of them will occasionally breathe fire at you. Thankfully, breathing fire takes off fairly little of your stamina bar, and it does take up some of your HP bar every time, however, which is unfortunate unless you have a better fire shield at this point in the game. That was a bad time to use Estus Flask, but it still served its purpose. The thing is about this boss, as the first boss fight with two enemies, is that you kind of are fighting the camera just as much as you're fighting Dark Souls the boss itself, because you will occasionally not be able to see where the fire is coming from or where other attacks are coming from. This is something that makes Dark Souls a little bit different from other games, because most action games will not have enemies attack you if you cannot see their attacks or where they're coming from. I believe I mentioned that actually back in my Devil May Cry series. Dark Souls is not like that. Dark Souls does not care about fair. Dark Souls just wants you to die. And you could argue that this is somewhat unfair, but it's also part of the challenge, and you do get audio cues for the attacks. Like, that is a lot of fire breathing. Once you have both Bale Gargoyles on the field, though, you want to continue focusing one of them, and only one of them, until they're dead, because that will make the fight significantly easier. I mean, as you might expect, killing something and having only one enemy to deal with would do. I know. Shocking turn of events, but it's true. Occasionally, both will go in on you and melee you. Just do your best to defend. This is also why I like starting with a good shield. Now, I only have one Estus Flask left, but this is actually not near as bad of a situation as you might think it is, because, and I don't think I'll have to do this, but you can use humanity to heal. Alright, one gargoyle is dead. Something worth noting that I did not do in this fight is that you can, in fact, cut off their tails. If you only hit the first gargoyle's tail, it will eventually come off, and you will be rewarded with a weapon. I can't remember, I think it's an alright weapon, but it's a halberd. It's interesting, and it doesn't matter because I didn't get it. It's something you have to go for. Most bosses in Dark Souls 2, in fact, can have their tails cut off. And your hint for this is the second gargoyle does not have a tail. Alright, it's time to end this fight, I think. You can stagger bosses. You just have to do enough damage. And with that, the Bell Gargoyles are dead. And one flaming execution later, not the worst thing in the world. That actually went pretty well, all things considered. Oh, I love Dark Souls boss fights, specifically Dark Souls 1 boss fights. I might talk about Dark Souls 2 a bit more as we get through the series, but I don't want to talk about it too much because I want the focus to remain solely on the first game and how amazing it is. And speaking of doing amazing things, something that did not happen but can happen is you might hear a bell ringing whenever you're traveling through this area. And that is your hint that you are getting close to the first bell of the undead, or I don't know if they have a suitable subtitle to them, actually. Either way, praise the sun, because it's bell time. And with that cutscene that clearly illustrates what you need to do next, done, yes, praise the sun, you are stuck back in the world. Dark Souls does not want to tell you what to do. Ever. And it won't, generally speaking, at all. But that's okay. Now, as soon as we get down here, there should be a new friend that we get to meet. And he's actually a very important friend, and I want to talk to him. There he is! He's in his friend pose. That is the most huggable pose. Like, if you saw someone like that, wouldn't you hug them?
Greetings. I am Oswald of Kareem, the Palm, and thou art a friend. For thee, a warm welcome. Cometh thou to confess, or to accuse? For indeed all sin is my domain.
Alright, so, several things worth noting. First, let's go through his items. First of all, I want a Purging Stone. Don't worry about it. It reduces curse, and that will become important later. Indictments. If you get invaded by a red spirit and use this item after they kill you, they will be marked as a sinner and will be hunted down by by another covenant. The name Moonblade. God, I don't remember what they're called. Moonlight something. Dark Moon Blades. I figured it out. They will be hunted down by the Dark Moon Blades and killed by the Dark Moon Blades. Homeward Bones. I will be buying several of these because they're going to be extremely useful for our quest. And the Book of the Guilty, which will show all players who have been indicted. So all the jerks. Karmic Justice, a talisman for casting, boosts to your bleeding and poison resistance, and lose nothing on death. These are all extremely useful items. Oswald can also help you abandon a covenant, and this is important if you want to change covenants, because changing from a covenant without abandoning your old covenant counts as a sin. However, leaving a covenant at Oswald does not count as a sin. If you have sinned, you will be hunted down by the Dark Moon's blades. Requesting absolution will remove all of your sins. However, it's expensive. I have sinned one time and it costs 8,500 souls. If I sin again, that will double. And you can learn how to make his hug pose. Or the, well, what is it?
You're not welcome anytime. It is only human to commit a sin.
Wonderful person, him. Alright, so with that done, we are now going to head back. And you might be wondering, where am I supposed to go now? Well, there are actually, like most of Dark Souls, quite a few places to go next. Also, one thing I didn't show, but you can do, is that if you are human, you can often summon people to help you with boss fights. And in this case, if you are human, you can actually summon Solaire to help with the Bell Tower Gargoyle, or the Bell Gargoyles. I don't know why I want to call them the Bell Tower Gargoyles. Regardless, you can summon him to help and he will tank the enemies for you. As I said before, I don't really want to do this. There's only one boss in particular, maybe two, that I will summon him to help with, because I always think that people come to see a Dark Souls Let's Play to see me or you or whoever's playing defeat all the enemies and be on their way. Which, did I get all the treasure in this area? I'm gonna do a quick sweep. It's something that sometimes I see people going through a Dark Souls Let's Play and letting phantoms take care of enemies and bosses for them. That is not going to be my style of Let's Playing. I kill things for myself. Alright, so we have a significant amount of souls and a lot to spend it on, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and go grab a couple of levels and then introduce the next area that we're going to get into. I don't think I missed anything important in that area. I think I might have missed a spear, but I'm not interested in using a spear right now, at least. In fact, I'm pretty sure I missed a spear. Do I have a spear in my inventory, in my weapons? Oh, I do. I did not miss it. All right, perfect. Great. Let's go ahead and grab some HP, some endurance for equip load, and that's it. Great. Defensive stats, however, as I said before, are extremely useful and probably the thing that you want to upgrade the most. Just like, in my opinion, upgrading a weapon is a little bit better than upgrading armor. But that's my opinion. Upgrading your armor is also extremely important. Don't not do it. Thankfully, he has infinite Titanite souls, or not Titanite souls, Titanite shards. So we can go ahead and buy a couple more. And use another Lost Soul of an Undead. And also, something I may have picked up. Let's see, where is it? Oh, no, I didn't actually pick anything up from those gargoyles. Weird. I could have sworn that they dropped something on their death, but I guess I was wrong. I must have been, obviously. So go ahead and use a couple of more of those, take them out of our reserve, and continue to reinforce the Uchikatana, which will do significantly more damage now. And I may as well show this. If you upgrade this, as you can see, it gives me roughly 5 more points of defense, which is not bad, but not really that great. In the last episode, I also showed off this demon down here, who, surprise, this is the direction we're going. This is a wandering demon, or otherwise known as a Titanite demon. And you will find a lot of these through the game, and he is the guard of the next area. He's kind of a mini-boss. Anytime you find one of these, it's, generally speaking, you're going to have a very difficult battle ahead of you. but the rewards for killing them are great, and in this case, by going this way, I'm definitely going to get a lot out of it. Holy, I am not dealing a whole lot of damage to him. Thankfully, he appears to have gone stuck on geometry, and since Dark Souls has enemies attack when they're behind you, I see nothing wrong with getting completely obliterated when I think I'm safe. Yeah. Thankfully, the attack patterns of high HP enemies like this tend to be fairly simple. So as you can see, all you really need to do is get on his side and then beat the hell out of him with two-handed attacks. And especially for Dex weapons, it's important to move over to two-handed attacks. Two-handed attacks, generally speaking, go off faster than their one-handed counterparts and deal significantly more damage. And also you only have to have a tiny sliver of HP, ow, to recover, but, yeah, that hurt. Thankfully, since we just used the bonfire, I'll respawn right where we were. That was a mistake that I made in that fight by guarding with a two-handed weapon instead of guarding with my shield. As you can see, that is virtually worthless. Okay, it's not worthless, it's just, if you're going to guard with a shield. And this is also in part why I think that a shield is such an important item in Dark Souls. Not so much in Dark Souls 2, but in Dark Souls, at least for your first time through PvE, you're going to want this equipped. Now, some other people might say you might want to use your talisman in your offhand as well, and swap between that and a shield, and that's a good strategy. Or you might want to have a second weapon equipped, and dual wield. And in my opinion, dual wielding in Dark Souls is not a good idea. You don't necessarily gain a whole lot out of it. What you gain is the second moves, or the second set of moves from the other weapon, because generally speaking, oh god, am I going to die to this thing again? Is this thing actually going to be harder than the Bell Tower Gargoyles were for me? Probably. I've never been good at fighting Titanite demons. The two-handed attack of this weapon, however, is particularly slow. So, yeah, circle strafing becomes one of the biggest tools you can use in Dark Souls, especially against big bads like this. Now, thankfully, the recovery animation for having your shield broken is not very long, and if you can get into this kind of cleft in his chest, he won't be able to hit you much. He will be able to hit you, though, so don't get too confident, like I just did. Okay, you need to go ahead and die, sir. Now, I actually kind of regret not going a strength build, because on the last playthrough I did, which was a strength build, I took care of this guy much easier. But mini fights in Dark Souls are going to be this way, where they're just battles of attrition, and can you not get hit? At least until you increase your attack stats more, which clearly is something I need to do. Not dying enough, so I obviously need to go more offensive. And I've also increased the power of the Uchigata enough where grabbing more and scaling is going to be a little bit more worthwhile for me. Alright, he is almost dead. I think I've spent more time fighting this Titanite demon than I have fighting the Bell Tower Gargoyles. Thankfully, he is one of the most difficult ones because, like most enemies, he's very early in the game, before you have a whole lot of options. However, upon killing them, you will be rewarded with Demon Titanite. This is extremely important and useful. And we'll talk about why once we need to. The next area in the game we're going to be exploring is, if I can get this to go off, the Dark Root Garden. Another fun area and kind of a side area that is completely non-essential to go through. In fact, I could turn around and go to the next area right now. However, I want to get a little bit more experience, level ups, and a particular ring that longtime Dark Souls players are going to know about that will help me with my rolls being so fast. So in the next one, we will go through Dark Root Garden and murder a whole bunch more things. For now, I'm going to use the rest of my souls and go ahead and level up some more, so that's all that's left in this video. If you don't care about that, then there you go. Wow, look at that, 200 more souls. I was the wrong button. Okay, level up. Let's go ahead and get some dexterity. As you can see, that will give my weapon 4 more damage now. That is when it starts becoming worthwhile, because 3 hits, 12 damage. That means that, you know, after 4 or 5 hits, I've done an extra hit, blah, blah, blah. Math is fun. Regardless, that is all I can level up, so 1 point of dexterity. Hooray! In the next one, we will go through Darkroot Garden and hopefully kill not just 1, but 2 bosses, but that is optimistic. I hope to see you then.